Hey everyone, there is a new episode of my Patreon exclusive podcast, Maybe You Can Relate, available now to the patrons of the Rural Woman podcast. You can get access to this full episode, plus extended episodes and patron-only episodes of the Rural Woman podcast when you join the patron community over on Patreon at tier 10 or higher. Here's your sneak peek of the new Maybe You Can Relate episode. Hey folks, I'm Katelyn Dubin. You may know me from such podcasts as the Rural Woman podcast, which you happen to be a proud member of the Patreon community, which is why you are hearing me through your earbuds right now. I'm coming to you from behind the mic in the Rural Woman podcast studio for this exclusive patron-only podcast to share with you a bit more about me, my personal life, our farm, my family, the wins, the struggles, really just a little bit of everything. I wanted to create a space to share my story with a more intimate audience to build a stronger connection. My goal here is to share about the things I've learned, the good, the bad, and everything in between. And maybe, just maybe, you can relate. Let's talk about quitting. I promise you, this is not my formal resignation letter to you after I just shared that we celebrated our 6th anniversary. I feel like a lot of times people kind of find those like big milestones to connect another big milestone to of like quitting. However, we're not doing that today. That might be unfortunate for some, but I'm assuming not you because you're here and you've chosen to be here. I think it's safe to say that as entrepreneurs, as people in business, whether you have a team or whether you're a solopreneur, there are times when we just kind of look back and say, is any of this really worth it? Like, what am I doing? And for me, there was a cyclical pattern of when this specifically would happen. And I've started sharing this more recently. And forgive me if I've said this story to you before, but every January since, 2017, January, February-ish, I have this existential crisis. And I'm so grateful that I didn't quit on myself then, because that's essentially what I would have been doing, is quitting on myself and on what I've built and what the potential of what I do is. I actually ran into a team of people that I actually went and interviewed for a job for this past travel season at an event that I was at. I ran into them and they looked familiar. And I looked to my friend and I said, why do those people look familiar? And she said to me, Katelyn, you went for a job interview with them. And I was like, oh shit. I have to say that the podcast itself is maybe the only thing I've ever consistently done in my entire life. And that's not the first time that's come out of my mouth, but I think the first time that did come out of my mouth, it was like an awakening. It was like, why is it this thing? Why is it this thing that I can show up and do consistently on a weekly basis, get what I need done for the rest of the amazing people behind the scenes to get this to you? And there's just something about the stories that I hear from women like you who absolutely light my fire. You can help support the stories of women in agriculture to be shared through the Rural Woman podcast on Patreon. What is Patreon? It's a membership-based platform that helps fund and support creators like me to create and produce content like this that you all love. New to the Rural Woman podcast Patreon is ad-free listening and patron-only bonus content and exclusive episodes. Learn more and join the patron gang today at patreon.com/The Rural Woman Podcast. Thanks for listening to the Rural Woman Podcast. The Rural Woman Podcast is more than just a podcast. We are a community. A huge thank you to the Rural Woman Podcast team, audio editor Max Hofer, and admin support from Kim & Co. Online. A special thanks to our Patreon executive producers, Sarah Riedner from Happiness by the Acre and Carrie Munven from Laystone Farms. To learn how you can become a Patreon executive producer or other ways to financially support the show, head on over to wildrosefarmer.com to learn more. Be sure to hit the follow or subscribe button wherever you listen to the podcast to get the latest episodes directly on your playlist. And if you are loving the show, please be sure to leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or any other platform that accepts ratings and reviews. You can connect with us on social media at the Rural Woman Podcast and with me at Wild Rose Farmer. One of the best ways you can support the show is by sharing it. Send this episode to a friend or share on your social media. Let's strengthen and amplify the voices of women in agriculture together. Until next time, my friend, keep sharing your story.